When I came home from work that Friday evening, my house key didn't fit the front door. At first, I thought I was simply using the wrong key because I was exhausted after a 12-hour shift. I tried again, then again, nothing. Confused, I stepped back and noticed the lock had been replaced. My stomach immediately tightened. Through the living room window, I saw something that made my heart stop. My younger brother, Ryan, was sitting on my couch with his feet on my coffee table, watching television as if he had lived there his entire life. My father was laughing beside him, while my mother carried a box of decorations toward the hallway. Before I could even knock, my mother opened the door just a few inches and looked at me with an expression that wasn't guilty. It was determined. "Michael," she said calmly, "don't make this difficult. We decided Ryan needs this house more than you do. You're successful. You'll buy another one someday." For several seconds, I couldn't even speak. I wasn't standing in front of a stranger's home. I was standing outside the house I had spent nearly 10 years paying for. The house where I had invited my own parents to live in my house after they retired, because I couldn't bear the thought of them struggling alone. They expected me to argue. They expected me to call the police. What they didn't expect was that I would quietly turn around, walk away without saying another word, and leave them with something they never saw coming. But before I tell you why I chose not to fight for my own house, you need to know how my family got to that point. My name is Michael Carter, and for most of my life, I believed that family always came first. I wasn't rich, famous, or particularly lucky. I worked as an electrician in Columbus, Ohio, spending long days climbing ladders, crawling through unfinished buildings, and fixing problems that most people never even noticed. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest. Every paycheck represented sore muscles, scraped hands, and early mornings before sunrise. I didn't complain because I had a simple dream. I wanted a place that truly belonged to me. While many of my friends spent their money on new trucks, expensive vacations, and weekends at bars, I saved every extra dollar. I skipped holidays, worked overtime whenever it was available, and even took weekend repair jobs for neighbors just to build my savings a little faster. After almost 10 years of living that way, I finally bought a modest 3-bedroom house on a quiet street. It wasn't a mansion, but every wall, every room, and every corner reminded me that hard work eventually pays off. Around that same time, my parents were having financial problems. My father had retired earlier than expected because of back problems, while my mother's medical expenses kept growing every year. Their small apartment became difficult to afford, and although they never directly asked me for help, I could see the stress on their faces whenever we talked. Without thinking twice, I invited them to move into my house. "It's big enough for all of us," I told them. "Save your money. Stay as long as you need." My parents were overwhelmed with gratitude. My mother hugged me tightly, crying as she thanked me for giving them a place to call home. My father patted my shoulder and told everyone who would listen that I was the kind of son every parent prayed for. Hearing those words made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. At that moment, I truly believed I had done the right thing. My younger brother Ryan was very different from me. Growing up, everything seemed to come easily to him because my parents never allowed him to experience the consequences of his choices. If he failed an exam, it was the teacher's fault. If he lost another job, it was because his boss didn't appreciate him. If he spent all his money, someone else always rescued him before things became difficult. My parents constantly described him as still finding himself, even after he turned 30. Meanwhile, I was expected to solve my own problems without asking anyone for help. Back then, I didn't resent Ryan. In fact, I often defended him whenever people criticized him. I believed everyone deserved another chance. Looking back now, I realize that giving someone endless chances without expecting responsibility isn't kindness. It's permission to keep making the same mistakes forever. About a year after my parents moved in, Ryan lost yet another job. This time he claimed his manager had treated him unfairly, but judging by how often the story changed, I suspected there was much more to it. A week later, I came home to find Ryan sleeping in my guest room. My mother smiled nervously and explained that he only needed a place to stay for a few days until he figured things out. I didn't argue. He was my brother. Of course he could stay. A few days slowly became several weeks, and several weeks quietly turned into months. Ryan made himself completely at home. He filled my garage with boxes of things he never unpacked, left dirty dishes in the sink, borrowed my tools without returning them, and somehow always had enough money to order takeout, even though he claimed he couldn't contribute to groceries or utility bills. Every time I tried to bring it up, my mother would gently remind me that Ryan was going through a difficult time. My father would add that families should support each other instead of keeping score. Wanting to avoid conflict, I stayed quiet. Little by little, something strange began happening inside my own home. My parents stopped asking my opinion before making decisions. Furniture I had bought was moved without anyone mentioning it to me. My office became Ryan's bedroom because, according to my mother, he needed more privacy. The family photographs on the hallway walls slowly changed too. Pictures of Ryan were framed and displayed everywhere, while photographs of me gradually disappeared into drawers and closets. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and heard my mother proudly telling a neighbor, "Ryan has finally found the perfect place to get back on his feet." She wasn't talking about my house anymore. She was talking about his house. I stood there for a moment, waiting for someone to correct her. Nobody did. It was the first time I truly felt like a guest in the home I had spent 10 years earning. I tried convincing myself that things would improve. I believed that once Ryan found another job, everything would return to normal. Instead, the opposite happened. Ryan began inviting friends over without asking me. He parked his car in the garage while mine sat outside in the rain. My father handed him the spare keys because, as he explained, he lives here too. Every day I noticed another small change, and every small change made it feel like my place in the family was quietly disappearing. Then, one Thursday afternoon, my bank called to confirm whether I had requested a mailing address change for my mortgage statements. Confused, I'd told the representative I hadn't changed anything. She apologized, canceled the request immediately, and said someone identifying themselves as a family member had tried to redirect all future correspondence. At the time, I assumed it had to be some kind of misunderstanding. I had no idea that by the following evening, I would come home to discover my key no longer opened the front door. I stood outside my own front door for what felt like an eternity. My mother was still holding the door half open while my father and Ryan watched from inside. None of them looked surprised to see me. In fact, it almost felt as though they had been expecting this moment all day. I finally found my voice and asked the only question that made sense. "What do you mean you've decided this house belongs to Ryan?" My father crossed his arms and spoke before anyone else could answer. "Your brother has nowhere else to go, Michael. You've always been responsible. You'll recover from this. Ryan won't." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, I bought this house. Every payment came from my paycheck." He sighed as though I were the one being unreasonable. "Don't make everything about money. A home is about family, and right now your brother needs this family more than you do." Ryan remained silent, avoiding eye contact, but he never once told our parents they were wrong. That silence told me everything. My own family had already made their choice long before I arrived home. For a few seconds, anger completely took over. Every part of me wanted to push the door open, call the police, and remind everyone whose name was written on every mortgage payment, tax bill, and legal document connected to that property. But then I looked at my parents. I looked at Ryan sitting comfortably on my couch, wearing a satisfied smile that he tried to hide, and something inside me changed. I suddenly realized that even if I forced my way back into that house, I would never truly have a home there again.
A house can be protected by locks, lawyers, and court orders. A family cannot. The moment my parents decided I mattered less than their favorite son, I had already lost something far more valuable than a building. I quietly nodded, reached into my pocket, placed my spare house key on the front porch, and looked at my father. "You're right," I said calmly. "Ryan can have the house." My mother looked relieved, almost surprised that I wasn't arguing. Ryan smiled for the first time all evening. None of them noticed the final sentence I whispered before walking away. "I hope you're ready for everything that comes with it." I checked into a small hotel that night and spent the weekend calling a lawyer, my mortgage company, and my insurance agent. Every single document confirmed exactly what I already knew. The house belonged to me and me alone. My parents had never been added to the deed. Ryan's name appeared nowhere. I could have started eviction proceedings immediately. Legally, I would have won within weeks. My lawyer actually encouraged me to do it. Instead, I thanked him for his advice and chose a different path. On Monday morning, I canceled every automatic payment connected to the property, except the mortgage. The internet was disconnected. Cable television disappeared. Lawn maintenance stopped. The cleaning service I occasionally paid for ended. Most importantly, I informed my bank that from that day forward, every property tax notice, maintenance bill, and repair request should come directly to the people currently living inside the house. If they believed they were homeowners, then they were about to discover what home ownership actually looked like. At first, everything remained silent. Weeks passed without a single phone call. Then reality slowly began catching up with them. Ryan had never paid a mortgage bill in his life. He didn't understand why the water heater suddenly needed replacing, or why the roof started leaking during a heavy storm. Property taxes arrived. Utility bills kept increasing. Appliances broke one after another. Every responsibility I quietly handled for years suddenly became impossible to ignore. One evening, my mother finally called me. Her voice sounded completely different from the confident woman who had stood behind that front door only a month earlier. She asked if I could come by because there were a few problems with the house. I politely declined and reminded her that she had already given the house to Ryan. "I'm sure he'll figure it out," I replied before ending the call.
3 months later, I received another call, this time from my father. His proud voice had completely disappeared. He admitted Ryan still hadn't found a steady work, bills were piling up, and they were struggling to keep up with basic expenses. Then he finally asked the question I had been expecting since the day I walked away. "Michael, could you come back and help us?" I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "Help you with what?" There was a long silence before he quietly replied, "The house." I couldn't help remembering his own words from that evening. "Your brother needs this house more than you do." I repeated them back to him exactly as he had said them. "Dad, you told me Ryan needed the house more than I did. I believed you." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. He knew I wasn't talking about the building anymore. A few weeks later, all three of them came to my office together. It was the first time we had been in the same room since I walked away. My mother cried before she even sat down. Ryan looked exhausted, and for the first time in his life, he actually seemed embarrassed by the consequences of his own choices. My father slowly looked around my office before lowering his head. "We made a terrible mistake," he admitted quietly. "We thought we were helping Ryan, but all we really did was hurt the son who had always been there for us." I listened without interrupting. My mother reached across the table and held my hand. "Please come home," she whispered. "We can fix this." I gently pulled my hand back and smiled sadly. "The house was never the problem," I said. "You didn't lose me because you changed the locks. You lost me because you made me feel like I no longer belonged in my own family." Eventually, I sold the house a few months later. After paying off the remaining mortgage, I bought a smaller place closer to my work and started over. It wasn't as large, but it was peaceful.
My parents moved into a small apartment they could afford, while Ryan finally found a full-time job and, for the first time in his life, learned what it meant to pay his own bills. We still speak occasionally, but our relationship is different now. Some things heal with time, and others simply become lessons you carry for the rest of your life. Looking back, I don't regret buying that house. I don't even regret letting my parents live there. The only thing I regret is believing that sacrificing everything for people automatically guarantees they'll value your sacrifices. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the people you love the most don't realize your worth until you're no longer there to carry their burdens. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more emotional stories about family, betrayal, forgiveness, and life's unexpected lessons. And tell me in the comments, if you were in Michael's place, would you have taken the house back immediately, or would you have walked away just like he did? Until next time, remember this: a home isn't built with bricks and walls. It's built with respect. And once respect is gone, even the biggest house can feel empty.